The first sign, the solitude that purifies, not the solitude that destroys you, begin to feel alone, even when surrounded by people. And that's frightening because the mind interprets it as abandonment. You look at people, take part in conversations, even smile, but inside you notice a distance that wasn't there before. It's not contempt, it's not superiority, it's an internal shift in frequency. What once distracted you now exhausts you. You're present, but you're not there. And that's when you realize something in you is changing faster than your environment can. But often, this solitude is a filter. It doesn't arrive to punish you. It arrives to refine you. Stoicism views this very objectively. When you are growing, you no longer fit inside your old mental environment. And then what used to feel like company starts to feel like noise. What used to feel social starts to feel like dispersion. What used to feel normal starts to feel empty. Because you're no longer hungry for stimulation, you're hungry for alignment. And then something happens. Something many people in the comments describe without even realizing it. You begin withdrawing energy from everything that doesn't strengthen you. Not out of hatred, out of precision. You stop feeding distractions that used to keep you numb. You stop renting your attention to things that can't build you. You stop entertaining people who only show up when you're convenient. And it feels lonely, because it is. But this is the kind of loneliness that makes you whole. You stop explaining yourself because you grasp a hard truth. Not everyone wants to understand you. Some people only want to keep you where they feel comfortable with you. And that's what makes change so confrontational. Your growth is a disruption. When you choose discipline over distraction, self-control over impulsiveness, silence over performance, you become a mirror. And mirrors make people uncomfortable, because a mirror doesn't attack anyone, it just shows what's there. And when people see you walking away from chaos, they have to face the chaos they still tolerate. When they see you choosing integrity, they have to face how often they compromise. When they see you stand firm, they feel their own instability. The world prefers predictable people, those who are always available, always justifying themselves, always trying to be accepted. When you change, the social system charges a toll. Explain yourself. You've changed. Why are you distant? What's wrong with you? But the Stoic understands. Over-explaining is often asking permission to exist. And maturity arrives the moment you realize your life doesn't require authorization. Sometimes silence is not avoidance. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes you're not distant. You're just no longer accessible to manipulation. You lose the audience and the applause, and this is where many break, because part of us was trained to function on validation. A compliment, a like, approval, someone saying, "You're right." When that disappears, it feels like the foundation collapses. And it does, because it wasn't a foundation, it was a dependency. This is the test of purifying solitude. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one applauds? Who are you when the only voice left is your own? Destructive solitude says, "You are nothing." Purifying solitude says, "Prove it to yourself quietly." And that hurts because for a while it feels like you've lost the world. But in truth, you are reclaiming yourself. Because your real life begins the moment you stop needing witnesses to be real. Because self-respect is built in private, and discipline is forged where no one claps. Silence reveals what distraction was hiding. When you pull back, the things you used to numb begin to surface. Old fears accumulated, guilt, unresolved anger, needs that turned into dependence, the constant desire to be understood. This is why people run from silence. Silence doesn't entertain you, it exposes you. That's why this stage feels like war. Not war against people, war against the old pattern within you. Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus converge on one point. It's not events that break you, but the way you interpret them. And in solitude, you begin to see your interpretations naked, without distraction. You realize I wasn't suffering only because of what was happening. I was suffering because of how badly I needed others to see me a certain way. And that realization is painful, but it's also power. Because the moment you see the chain, you can remove it. The solitude that purifies gives you power back. It replaces weakness with strength. Before, I need to be understood. Now, I need to act rightly even when misunderstood. Before, I need to be accepted. Now, I need to be upright. Before, I have to prove myself. Now, I have to sustain myself. And that changes everything, because the person who learns to walk without validation learns to walk free. That's why the video is right when it says this stage tries to break you. It tries to pull you back into the old version of yourself, the version that bent to fit, the version that explained too much, apologized too quickly, tolerated too long, stayed too late, but you're not that person anymore. Stoic application for this stage. If you're going through this, practice 3 simple moves. Name what is noise. Ask, does this strengthen me or weaken me? If it weakens you, it's noise, and noise doesn't deserve your energy. Practice intentional silence. This isn't disappearing from the world, it's reducing the need to explain yourself. Firm action needs no speech. Boundaries don't require debates. Replace validation with virtue. Instead of asking, what will they think? Ask, what is just? What is wise? What is disciplined? This is Stoicism in practice. The second sign, the urge to abandon what binds you, even if it feels safe. You begin to feel sick of your old life, not ordinary boredom, a deeper, almost physical discomfort, as if something inside you is saying, enough. You try to convince yourself to stay. You try to make it work. You try to fit again. But you don't. The same conversations feel hollow. The same habits lose their taste. The same cycles become heavy, because you've outgrown what you used to tolerate. And the body knows before the mind can explain. And this is specific. You're not just changing phases. You're losing tolerance for what diminishes you. What once felt normal now feels like an insult to your conscience. This is where transformation becomes obvious. You start seeing the hidden cost of things. A conversation that goes nowhere isn't just talk. It's energy leaking. A weakening habit isn't just a habit. It's a daily pact with a smaller version of yourself. A job that drains you isn't just work. It's rent paid with your life. A relationship that shrinks you isn't just a relationship. It's an environment where you amputate yourself to belong. And you realize what was comfortable has become suffocating, because comfort, when it becomes a rule, isn't rest. It's a cage. And cages don't always look like bars. Sometimes they look like routines, like benefits, like stability, like approval. The urge to quit isn't weakness. It's clarity. Many mistake this stage for confusion, but in Stoic terms, it's painful clarity. You begin to feel repulsed by pretending you're fine, pretending you agree, pretending you can endure, pretending it still makes sense. And something shifts inside. You can no longer lie to yourself just to belong. This is one of the strongest signs of the process, when the need for coherence becomes stronger than the fear of displeasing others, because the old version of you could betray yourself and still sleep. This version can't. The world resists your change, because your change disrupts their balance. And then comes the hardest part. When you change, the world calls you rebellious, ungrateful, confused. Understand this. Most people aren't judging what's best for you. They're reacting to what your change triggers in them. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you become difficult. When you set boundaries, you become cold. When you choose discipline, you become extreme. When you refuse emotional crumbs, you become arrogant. When you leave the old script, you become unstable. The Stoic doesn't measure truth by others' comfort. He measures it by integrity. And that takes courage, because part of us wants social peace more than inner peace. This stage forces a choice: maintain the image or protect the soul. A cage is still a cage, even when it's padded. This sentence defines the breaking point. There are prisons that don't look like prisons. An okay salary that erases you inside a stable relationship without respect, a safe routine that makes you feel dead old. Friendships that require pretending, harmless habits that drain your strength. The padding is comfort. The cage is the cost. Loss of identity, purpose, dignity. When you start scratching the walls, it isn't madness. It's life. It's your spirit saying, I wasn't made to survive. I was made to become. And this is where the most dangerous temptation shows up. To go back, just to stop the discomfort. But the Stoic remembers, relief is not always truth. Sometimes relief is just retreat. Why does this feel so violent inside? Because you're not just leaving things. You're leaving identities. You're letting go of old versions of yourself, the one who accepted to avoid loss, the one who smiled to avoid conflict, the one who said, it's fine, when it wasn't the one who adapted to be loved. Abandoning an identity brings grief. Even if it was a prison, it was familiar. That's why you feel fear. That's why you feel guilt. That's why you doubt. But here's a core Stoic principle. Pain is not an argument against change. Pain is cost, and cost exists whenever you exchange the false for the true. What Stoicism asks here: firmness without theatre. The common mistake is over-explaining and negotiating with what has already ended internally. The Stoic does the opposite. Less talk, more action, less complaint, more structure, less impulse, more decision. Because a better life isn't built by feeling right, but by acting rightly, repeatedly. Consistency beats intensity. Structure beats mood. Practical application. 3 Stoic questions. If you're here, use these as blades. Does this strengthen my character or slowly corrupt it? If it corrupts, it isn't safe. It's slow poison. If I continue like this for 5 years, who do I become? This question kills illusion. Am I choosing from fear or from virtue? Fear keeps you alive. Virtue makes you whole. One final distinction. Abandoning what binds you isn't destroying your life. It's reclaiming it. Some quitting is cowardice, yes, but some quitting is maturity. Walking away from what drains you to protect what builds you. That's why your body reacts, your mind resists, and your soul insists. Because when the old world inside you begins to collapse, it feels like chaos. But often, it's just alignment. The third sign: destructive emotions lose their dominance. This is the subtlest and therefore the most powerful sign. It doesn't arrive as euphoria. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't feel like motivation. It shows up quietly. You still feel, but you are no longer commanded. You still feel anger, but it doesn't drive your body. You still feel fear, but it doesn't write your decisions. You still feel sadness, but it doesn't drown you. This is a turning point. For a long time, most people live imprisoned by reaction, exploding, disappearing, attacking, begging, justifying, humiliating themselves, regretting, then repeating. The Stoic doesn't deny emotion. He governs it. Stoicism doesn't promise calm seas. It promises elevation. Storms are inevitable. The difference is perspective. Before, you were the storm. Now, the storm passes through you. It's like climbing an inner mountain. Chaos remains below, but you observe it with distance. And that distance isn't coldness, it's command. You realize something crucial. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is training. Life is loading weight onto your structure to test what's real and what was impulse. What once broke you now educates you. What once triggered you now reveals you. What once confused you now organizes you. And you begin to understand something few people ever master. Your emotions are visitors. They are not your rulers. Where freedom actually begins, between stimulus and response the world provokes, life pressures, people test you, circumstances confront you, but there is a narrow space, almost invisible, between what happens and what you do with it. For the Stoic, that space is sacred, because there you choose to act or react, to stand or collapse, to stay silent or wound to leave or beg to remain intact or sell your soul for relief. And the more you use that space, the less power chaos has over you, because you stop being easy to trigger, you stop being easy to bait, you stop being easy to control. The deepest break, losing the need for validation. When you lose the need for validation, everything shifts. Validation is a social leash. The need for approval is where the world controls you. If I don't please them, I'll be abandoned. If I say no, they'll hate me. If I change, they'll talk. If I'm myself, I'll lose people. That's why the line lands so hard. A man who does not beg for approval cannot be controlled. Not because he's arrogant, but because he doesn't trade dignity for affection, status, or emotional scraps. Social blackmail loses power, judgment loses authority, noise loses command. You may still be criticized, but you are no longer moved by criticism, because the moment you stop needing approval, you stop being negotiable. The core truth. What looks like collapse may be alignment. This message resonates because the comments reveal real suffering. Unemployment, divorce, loneliness, exhaustion, homelessness, the feeling of having reached the limit. And at the limit, you don't need pretty words. You need meaning and direction. Stoicism offers both. It doesn't say everything will be fine. It says, do your inner duty even when things aren't fine. It doesn't promise a fair world. It promises inner firmness. And that matters when everything collapses externally, because the one thing that cannot collapse is your center. So the Stoic question isn't, why is this happening to me? It's harder and more useful. What is this moment training me to endure without losing my integrity? Because integrity is what remains when everything else falls. Signs you are crossing, not just surviving if you are tired but still walking. That's not weakness, it's endurance. If you've begun saying no without guilt, that's not selfishness, it's maturity. If you stopped explaining yourself to those who don't respect you, that's not coldness, it's self-awareness. If your inner storms are becoming shorter, that's not luck, it's training. And if your silence is growing stronger than your need to prove, that is command. So maybe you're not at the end, maybe you're at the threshold. And here's a Stoic truth: thresholds always feel lonely and difficult, because that's where the old self tries to pull you back. What Stoicism asks now, one simple daily decision. Stoicism doesn't demand perfection, it demands repetition. Don't control the world, control your response. Don't beg for peace, build peace through discipline. Don't seek validation, seek rectitude. Rectitude means doing what is right when no one is watching, keeping character when no one understands, continuing without applause, enduring discomfort without returning to old patterns. That is how you cross. What happens after you cross? The day you cross, they'll say you became cold, then they'll say you became strong, and one day they'll say you became unbreakable, but you'll know the truth. You didn't become cold, you became lucid. You didn't become hard, you became disciplined. You didn't become distant, you became free. You didn't break, you crossed through.